This week on Christian World News, President Trump takes off on his world religion tour, visiting Riyadh, Jerusalem, and Rome. Hear what he plans to say to the world's Muslims and his plan to pray at Jerusalem's Western Wall.
Plus, moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Candidate Trump pledged he would do it, but this week, President Trump says, not now. Will he keep his promise?
And to Indonesia, a Christian governor is sentenced to 2 years in prison for blaspheming the Quran. Now protesters across the country are crying out, Free Ahok.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스찬 월드뉴스입니다. 도널드 트럼프 미 대통령이 취임 후 첫 해외 순방을 다녀왔습니다. 유럽 국가들과의 정상회담에도 참여했는데요. 하지만 그 전에 먼저 이스라엘을 포함한 중동 국가를 방문했습니다. 이슬람 테러에 대한 연합군 강화에 힘이 실릴지 주목되고 있습니다. 오늘의 첫 번째 소식입니다.
The president will stop first in Saudi Arabia, where he'll meet with the leaders of more than 50 Muslim nations. He's expected to deliver an important speech on the need to directly confront and defeat radical Islam.
The speech is intended to unite the broader Muslim world against common enemies of all civilization and to demonstrate America's commitment to our Muslim partners.
CBN News' David Brody will be traveling with the president.
Stephen Miller, who has worked for Jeff Sessions, who's worked for Michelle Bachmann, very conservative, he's writing that Islam speech. So get ready for some potential fighting words.
And there's hope in Saudi Arabia for a reset in relations with the United States.
Saudi Arabia is delighted. They were very disappointed with President Obama, who they thought favored Iran rather than them.
The president then heads to Israel, where he'll meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Monday and Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas Tuesday in Bethlehem. One thing the president is not expected to do on this trip, announce the moving of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, something he pledged as a candidate. But he will visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and say a prayer at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Then it's on to Rome and a meeting with Pope Francis. The two had sharp differences during the campaign season over Mr. Trump's proposed border wall. On Thursday, it's a NATO summit in Belgium and a visit to what was, during Trump's election campaign, the evil empire. The European Union headquarters in Brussels, at a meeting with the heads of the EU and the European Council. Trump will also meet newly elected French President Emmanuel Macron. The president will then go to the G7 summit in Sicily before wrapping up his trip with a speech to American and Allied servicemen and their families. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
이번에는 트럼프 행정부를 담당하는 취재기자 연결해 이와 관련해 좀 더 자세한 소식 들어보겠습니다.
Well, Wendy, the president, as George said, is making his first foreign trip the World Religion Tour. This was his choice. He chose to visit these countries first. And if you look at this president's foreign policy, he is very focused on defeating ISIS, on defeating radical Islamic terrorism. So as he visits these holy sites of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, he's going to be working to spread a unifying message and saying, basically, these threats are a threat to all civilized societies, and so we really need to be unified against this threat. I think another thing that this trip demonstrates is that the president understands that a lot of the problems in the world have to do with religion. The way that religious people think about each other, the way that religions relate to one another, and certainly something that Christians understand, which is the fact that there are a lot of unseen forces at play here in the world, especially in that part of the world.
So true. Well, regarding Israel, the administration has raised some eyebrows, first by not acknowledging that the Western Wall belongs to Israel, and then saying they won't move the embassy to Jerusalem yet. How are the president's evangelical supporters responding to these surprises?
Yeah, Wendy, well, there's a lot of disappointment out there. You know, the president's very strong stance on Israel is one of the many reasons why evangelicals went to the polls and supported him in record numbers. And, you know, I think the fact that the president is not inviting Prime Minister Netanyahu to join him at the Western Wall. Netanyahu, of course, being the leader of the Jewish state, the Western Wall being the holiest site in Judaism, is a bit of a slap in the face to both Netanyahu and Israel. On the move of the embassy to Jerusalem, the White House is being very careful to say, they told me, White House officials told me that, yes, they will not make an announcement to move the embassy on this trip, but that doesn't mean that a final decision has been made. And having watched this president over the past few months, I can tell you he truly is about the art of the deal. So I can see him holding this decision kind of over the heads of the Palestinians who have told him that they're going to negotiate with the Israelis in good faith. We'll see about that. The president has until June 2nd to make that decision about whether or not he's going to waive U.S. law, which says that the U.S. embassy should be in Jerusalem. And I just want to point this out because the facts of this are that 50 years ago, Israelis defended themselves miraculously against all odds, attacks on all sides coming at them, to capture East Jerusalem, to unify the city, and to make it the capital of Israel. Israel, of course, America's closest ally. And it's really ludicrous that 50 years later, we're still having this debate, and the fact that the U.S. Embassy is not in Jerusalem.
That clearly shows that this is a spiritual battle as much as a political battle, Jennifer. Well, there is a bright spot in the Trump administration. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley has been an outspoken defender of Israel, and recently she told David Brody about the Western Wall and the U.S. Embassy. Let's watch.
I don't know what the policy of the administration is, but I believe the Western Wall is part of Israel. And I think that that's how, you know, we've always seen it, and that's how we should pursue it. I'm not real sure what happened with that issue, but I know that they're trying to fix that and get that taken care of. But, you know, we've always thought that the Western Wall was part of Israel. Obviously, I believe that, you know, the capital should be Jerusalem and the embassy should be moved to Jerusalem, because if you look at all of their government is in Jerusalem. So much of what goes on is in Jerusalem. And I think that we have to, you know, see that for what it is.
Jennifer, just like you were saying, and it sounds like she's the right person to have at the United Nations.
She certainly is a bright light. You know, Wendy, the level of anti-Semitism inside the United Nations is really unbelievable. And another thing that's unbelievable is recently all 100 members of the United States Senate, I just want to repeat that, all 100 members, Democrats and Republicans, sent a letter to the United Nations and told them that they need to cut this out. They also pointed out the United Nations Human Rights Council for its hypocrisy. This council constantly targets Israel. Meanwhile, some of the worst human rights violators sit on this council. Countries like China, Saudi Arabia, Cuba. And so Nikki Haley's bold leadership and her willingness not to mince words on these issues truly is a bright light, and it's the place and it's the type of leadership that the U.S. really should have been delivering to the UN for a long time.
Couldn't agree more. Jennifer Wishon at the White House for us.
트럼프 대통령의 첫 방문지는 사우디아라비아였습니다. 이곳에서 이슬람과 관련한 연설을 했는데요. 하지만 트럼프 대통령에게 좀 더 강한 어조를 기대하는 이들이 더 많이 있습니다. 계속해서 만나보시죠.
They were words former President Barack Obama refused to utter during his 8-year presidency. Radical Islamic terrorism, but not President Trump.
We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth.
This weekend, the president takes that message to Saudi Arabia, the biggest state sponsor of Islamic terrorism in the world. And he will urge the monarchy there to tackle the evils of radical Islam head on.
He will deliver an inspiring yet direct speech on the need to confront radical ideology and his hopes, the president's hopes, for a peaceful vision of Islam to dominate across the world.
Trump will meet with leaders from more than 50 Muslim countries and take part in the opening of a new center in Saudi Arabia aimed at promoting what the U.S. hopes will be a moderate version of Islam.
By establishing and operating this center, our Muslim friends, including Saudi Arabia, are taking a firm stand against extremism and those who use a perverted interpretation of religion to advance their criminal and political agendas.
The president is also expected to announce plans for a NATO-like organization of Arab countries that would fight Islamic terror groups in the region.
One of the goals on this trip is for President Trump to mobilize a coalition, including Saudi Arabia, against ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Iran.
Jim Phillips, a Middle East expert with the Heritage Foundation, says the president mustn't shy away from confronting the Saudis on their climate of radicalization.
If he offers the prospect of greater security cooperation versus Iran, which is their greatest enemy, then I think they would be willing to take more steps to confront Islamist radicals in their own ranks.
The Saudi king says he wants to fight Islamic extremism, but Phillips worries whether the government can effectively go after terror groups that pose a threat to the region and the United States as well.
I think he can be trusted against Iran because Iran is Saudi Arabia's arch rival. But Saudi Arabia still is likely to support groups that are hostile to the U.S. and to Israel.
Franklin Graham, son of evangelist Billy Graham, often speaks out against the threat of radical Islam. He says past American presidents have been reluctant to pressure the Saudis because of various military and economic partnerships between our two countries.
We've had many Americans there working for years in the oil business and so forth, but we don't need their oil. We have all the oil in this country that we need. We don't need to be kissing up to them. And I think it's time that we have a president who will stand up to Saudi Arabia.
But Graham and others aren't holding their breath. President Trump will arrive in the Desert Kingdom this weekend bearing gifts, among them tens of billions of dollars worth of U.S. military hardware to help the Saudis boost their defense capabilities.
There's so many business interests, and they spend a lot of money buying weapons from us and all these kinds. We have a tendency to look the other way.
Saudi Arabia's King Salman is calling Trump's upcoming visit historic and hopes the summit on Islam will establish a new partnership in confronting extremism and terrorism. After Saudi Arabia, Trump will go on to Israel, then the Vatican.
미국의 기독교 지도자 60명이 트럼프 대통령에게 서명 서한을 보내 예루살렘을 이스라엘의 수도로 인정해 줄 것을 촉구했습니다. 또한 미 대사관을 예루살렘으로 옮겨달라고 요구했는데요. 하지만 백악관은 아직은 시기상조라는 입장을 밝혔습니다. 이스라엘과 팔레스타인 간의 협상 재개에 영향을 미칠 수 있기 때문입니다. 함께 만나보시죠.
It was a campaign promise candidate Donald Trump stated over and over.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
But President Trump won't fulfill that promise when he visits Israel. It's the latest chapter in America's long diplomatic history in the Holy Land. This is where the first U.S. consulate stood in 1844, just inside the walls of the old city near the Jaffa Gate. Now it's used as the Christian Information Center. In 1912, it moved just a few blocks away to a place called Prophet Street. Then it moved to this location where the U.S. representative to the Palestinian Authority now sits. This consulate reports directly to the State Department rather than the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. About a 10-minute drive away stands a U.S. government building that provides consular services for U.S. citizens. All of this while the embassy sits in Tel Aviv. After the White House announcement not to move the embassy now, the question remains, will it ever relocate to Jerusalem?
We actually met with Senator John Kyle up on Capitol Hill one day, and we gauged that he was serious and that moving the embassy was an issue that he wanted to do on principle. It wasn't politics, it was principle, and he asked us to draft a bill.
More than 20 years ago, David Parsons of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, the ICEJ, helped draft the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act.
As the bill went through the sausage grinder of Congress, it changed. They added this presidential waiver authority, which it was intended to gut the bill. It said every 6 months the president can suspend this bill if he certifies it's in U.S. national security interest. It's fear that has kept us out.
For more than 20 years, successive presidents have signed that waiver, and the current one expires June 1st. In addition to national security, another reason given for invoking the waiver is that the U.S. is supposed to be an honest broker.
How would you address the concern or criticism that some people would have? If you do this, you're going to undermine the quote-unquote peace process, and you'll be undermining this ability to have a negotiated deal.
I think that at least putting our embassy in West Jerusalem would actually strengthen the peace process. And I think the longer that the nations wait to do this, the bigger and bigger the question of Jerusalem becomes.
Parsons says Jerusalem seems to be on a 50-year cycle of favor.
When you look at, not only the last 50 years when the city was reunified in 1967, in 100 years ago when Allenby, the British general, marched into the city, liberated from the Ottoman Turks, just as the British government was committing to build a Jewish state here. Even 150 years ago, 1867, General Warren discovered the old city, the original city of David, south of the Temple Mount. And each of these things, every 50 years, something happening in Jerusalem to really free it and release it into its prophetic purposes.
Israeli leaders hope that one day it includes relocating the embassy.
Israel reunited Jerusalem 50 years ago in 1967, but the connection of the Jewish people to Jerusalem, spiritually, goes back 2,000 years. Our claim, our presence in Jerusalem has been here for decades. Jews have been streaming back to their ancient capital for years. And the movement of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is an American recognition of the special ties of Jerusalem to the Jewish people. It may be symbolic, but it goes to the core of the identity of Israel.
I think the U.S. moving the embassy to Jerusalem is the right thing to do. It's way overdue. And, of course, it would be a blessing to the U.S.
In 1950, Israel declared Jerusalem as its capital. In 1967, it captured the Old City and the eastern part of Jerusalem. Then in 1980, Israel passed the Basic Law Jerusalem that incorporated all of the land captured in 1967 as its capital. That's when most embassies left Jerusalem for Tel Aviv, and the ICEJ moved in.
To represent Christians from all over the world who want to stand in solidarity with Israel, help secure it, and help it reach its destiny, and also want to stand in solidarity with their claim and connection to Jerusalem.
And whether or not the U.S. Embassy eventually moves to Jerusalem, Parsons sees a glorious future for the city.
This is where that promised son of David, the Messiah, will rule and reign over a world in peace and righteousness. And of course, we're Christians. We believe that's Jesus. But I think a house of prayer for all people, that exalted throne of the Messiah during the Messianic age, this is Israel's ultimate destiny.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
자카르타의 전 기독교 주지사가 이슬람을 모독한 혐의로 2년형을 선고받자 인도네시아에서는 항의의 물결이 일어나고 있습니다. 이슬람 급진주의자들이 인도네시아에 종교를 강요하려 한다는 우려도 커지고 있습니다.
Angry and embittered supporters of Jakarta's Governor Basuki Cahayapurnama, better known as Ahok, gathered in front of this court building demanding the release of the Christian governor.
This banner says, Bebaskan Ahok. It means freedom for Ahok.
Ahok was sentenced to 2 years in prison after being found guilty of blasphemy against the Quran. The charge was based on a re-election campaign speech where he allegedly stated that voters were being deceived by his opponents, who said the Quran prohibits Muslims from having a non-Muslim leader.
Because of this blasphemy clause, maybe you have no willingness to insult the Quran, but just quote the Quran, and then they say you conduct blasphemy.
Ahok, a Christian with ethnic Chinese roots, is a double minority in Indonesia, which is the world's largest Muslim country. Observers say the judges may have been pressured by radical Muslim groups because they ignored the recommendation of the prosecutors to put Ahok under a 2-year probation due to insufficient evidence. Political analyst Bonnie Hargens says Ahok's case is part of a political game plan for the next presidential election. He warns that radical Muslims are using religion to impose their extremist views on the country.
They claim this country and they do not hide anything.
While Ahok's lawyers prepare an appeal to the higher court, his supporters continue to hold rallies. They say the Christian governor symbolizes hope for Indonesia.
He has been successful in creating the true change in Indonesia. So when we are now talking about Ahok, we are talking actually about ourselves, about our dreams, about our hope, our expectations about the future of Indonesia, about democracy.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Jakarta.
오퍼레이션 블레싱 팀이 네팔의 아이들을 위해 학교를 재건했습니다. 2년 전 발생한 지진으로 지역이 초토화되고 학교 건물이 무너졌는데요. 학교가 재건된 덕분에 40분이나 걸려 다른 학교에 가서 공부해야 했던 아이들에게도 희망이 생겼습니다. 오늘의 마지막 소식입니다.
So Operation Blessing stepped in to help, providing relief to the disaster victims and helping them get back on their feet through skills training and micro-enterprise programs, as well as rebuilding the entire school. Now, 54 children are registered and ready to attend classes right in their own community.
오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.